It's the weekly 30-30 trading list on the ASX. We are looking at the 30 strongest momentum companies over the quarter, and then we're looking at the 30 best launchpad stocks. These are the companies that are aiming to take off, poised to run, and possibly move into that momentum list. Man, walking through the charts, picking out the eyes of the best, and then analysing the charts is Gary Glover from Novus Capital. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Chris. How you going?
Oh, I'm all right. It's a Friday in Sydney, so there's a weekend upon us. Storm clouds on the horizon, but the market's giving us a lot to look at. So I noticed the first chart you've got on the screen here on this 30-30 list is an old leader. Is Silex back in the list, is it?
Still, yeah, back in there. So number 3 there. I've sort of avoided the first two because sort of one's sort of a takeover, and the other one's a little small. But yeah, Silex, back in the list there. So I actually thought this last little false break here might have been it, but all it's done is pull back in the range and then popped again. So still, that's again the old adage, isn't it, Chris? It's sort of the leaders continue to keep leading. So it didn't show too much weakness in there. I guess there probably wasn't, if you looked off that high there, and that was, what I call a little false break here. What you didn't see there, look at those 3 or 4 days after that.
Yeah, right. No volume, nothing.
Didn't see any selling at all. So no one was prepared to sell this stock, even though we're looking pretty high in the range. Got a bit of a false break here. So if you had sort of sold here, you might have been getting nervous here because no one else was selling. So, and then we've got a sharp reversal up here and then some follow through again. So that's still pretty firm here. So look, I know she's pretty stretched here, but doesn't seem to be sort of showing too much weakness there. So pretty interesting. The other on the list there was this, if you look sort of through the list there, we're sort of obviously energy is a big theme through here. Obviously we've got the coal stocks are been pretty robust. Coal's been in there, a few biotechs have been in there as well. Been a few lithium and a few retailers as well in there, but definitely feels like energy is sort of on the move there, and particularly in the launch pad there. But before we get ahead of ourselves, just this one was number 6 on the list was Bowen Coal, BCB. So we've gone back up to retest the old high here, which is around 39.40 cents there. So still some okay volume in here. So not showing too much weakness there. I don't like the fact that it's had a pretty deep correction there. That's a pretty big pullback. I'd rather sort of see this nice and orderly, not see the overbalance there. That is an overbalance of the trend, because oftentimes then you go back and retest. So, I'd just be a little, even though the volume's okay in there, just be a little, there's Minervini. He would be sort of, selling some into this sort of move here, taking some profits there. Maybe it congests here or comes back under the high there. I just don't like the fact that these corrections are all small here, and this is a big overbalance. So that can be, you can go through a sideways consolidation after a type of event like that. So it's not too much on a weekly, but still the size of that correction now is quite large, So
if we think about that big correction there, like if there was strong institutional support that Minervini will kind of point to, that is a good backing to have for a leader, so would O'Neill. Would that kind of indicate that maybe there's lacking that institutional support that are at the willing to mop up the shares that are being sold down heavily? So kind of there's not the big hands buying it?
Yeah, look, it's just I guess there's some risk in this. Maybe there being a smaller one. So it's obviously maybe the bigger boys are trading the bigger stocks there. Obviously Whitehaven, New Hope, maybe even Coronado. I guess there's been a few other bigger players there, but this is just sort of, when that last pullback, there was a bit of a, definitely quite a release in there, and there was decent volume in there, and even this volume there has been pretty light. That selling volume came in there was a little heavier as well. The only thing on the chart is this these 3 weeks here. That's really the positive aspect, is that's finally had a bit of an up move on some decent volume. That was the strongest volume week there, probably for a long time. Probably, going back 4 or 5 years here. So seen a bit of follow through here. So that's the plus, is that the last 3 weeks have seen some volume there. But I guess what you might want to see there is probably a consolidation under here. So you might maybe you get a cup and handle or something there, but still a bit risky being a small one. But yeah, just interesting. I mean, we did see this sort of early in the week and thought, well, it looks like it's probably going to go back and retest the high, but I think you might see some resistance there, but yeah, we'll see there. What have we got there? LTM had a bit of a jump there. That was a bit of an upgrade. So a bit hard to trade that. Wasn't sort of too much of a signal there. But I guess the thing there is we got a fundamental upgrade in the stock. Obviously gapped up, but then it's gone on here. So as we say, sometimes you get that fundamental news. You still can, this maybe for day traders there, they can probably trade that and then get a few more days upwards all the time.
And that big volume's more than double what the average was for sort of 2 months, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So definitely some follow through there. So everyone was a little shaky, a bit worried about these sort of stocks. Obviously, growth is a little bit under pressure there. So getting a good number there, a bit like I think Megaport had something there a while back, which sort of gapped up and then sort of went on with it for a few days. So they can mess around a bit after that, but they really sort of come back after a bit of a fundamental trigger like that. So. But
yeah, it's one that Gil Morales and Chris Karcher looked into, and they call the Bible gap up. If you do have fundamental news and then sort of 150, 200% volume spike, like you're saying, they rarely look back. They just keep charging.
Yeah, it's hard. They'll go up a bit there, then they might consolidate. I think it's the data is a few weeks later, a month later, they've generally it's a high percentage of them and sort of keep going up. So. One chart I thought was pretty interesting there because I think we covered this, was in the list last week, was PLL in that lithium area, and we were a bit worried about
the island you called it,
the island up here. And I thought, I just don't like these sort of stock just because it's sort of history of sort of making these sort of islands. This sort of stock, they're just sort of littered with islands everywhere, and it sort of did gap down, which you would have been a bit nervous about seeing it gap down, after here. But then it's capped straight back up again. So this is a good chart here because this is the sort of activity which is going on in the market at the moment. It's definitely pretty choppy, pretty volatile sort of structure and setup currently. So I just think this is sort of telling you how tricky it is out there. Just interesting there. Satire sort of. This has had a bit of a pullback here. It's not a stock that I am keen on there, but the chart's not the worst one there. Literally pulled back in a bit of a consolidation there, set on top of the previous high, but not seeing much volume there. So again, not one that I like, but structurally looks okay. Any U is one that I think we might have spoke about a while back there. Remember we were talking about this having a little tight pullback in here, a little flag in there.
Yeah.
So has sort of gone on, hasn't gone to a new high yet, but definitely that was a bit of a break on that day there, and that does suggest we'll probably go higher here, but not really sort of flying here. Like it normally this sort of setup, you'd sort of expect this to probably get to a new high within 3 days. I normally like that's 1, 2, 3. We got near there, just didn't go on with it. With an inside day here, so still positive here, but probably. If I had traded that, which I didn't, I'd be disappointed with the way it's moving here. I'd certainly be tightening up my position there. Deep yellow, DYL had a bit of a pop here.
This is one of the uranium ones, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's lots happening in this sort of sector here. So so just obviously that I guess that sort of energy sector is sort of flying there. I think Liontown. Also, again, similar to sort of Neuron there, we had a nice little tight consolidation there. And then once we sort of broke up here, you could probably draw a little flag in here. And then once we got a bit of a break up here, this looked pretty interesting there. The volume wasn't really, a bit mild here. And again, it hasn't gone on as well. So the volumes are pretty light here. So getting a few sort of technical consolidations and then breakouts, but not seeing follow through, Chris, which is a little bit of a concern for the overall market. Temple & Webster, which was on the list the other day, we sort of spoke about traded here. So this is sort of, bit of impulsive, corrective, impulsive, corrective, impulsive, and then this is probably a larger drop off here than you'd probably want to see. This is not like a side, not like a sort of a
Not really
sideways
sitting
sort
on
of
top
tight.
of the last one or giving spacing, is it?
No, so it's not a tight consolidation. It's actually probably quite the opposite here now, because now this is on the way down here. This is like one, what, you know, McLaren would go 1, 2, 3 days down here. There's okay volume in there. And then what's happened since then is this little tight consolidation. So this is almost like a bearish consolidation, like a little little flag there. So underneath, so coming, last thing on the chart is a move down, then a sideways move. That's actually looking a little negative for me. So I know we've still got a few higher lows in place there, but this, you know, we would want to sort of see something sideways tied in here and not go down before entering a bit. This one here, that's a bit of a concern for that pattern there. So I'd be if I was still along that pattern, which I'm not, I'd be tightening up here. I just think that's looks a little negative there. That's kind of mainly it on the quarterly momentum list. The launch pad, there's just so much happening in the launch pad this week, and it's just all it's all energy. So I mean, obviously we've got, you know, coal stocks on the move still. We've got all stocks sort of moving after sort of bouncing off a bit of a key level, and then you got uranium as well sort of moving there. So it's just stocks were just flying here. So number one there was Lotus Resources, which is in that uranium sector there. So a bit of a pop there, obviously on the back of that sort of Japan news there, that they're going to fire up a few more nuclear sort of air reactors there. So I think they got eight or nine coming, or 8 or 9 there online. So yeah, so that's pretty positive for the uranium stocks. This one's had a bit of a pop there, but probably too small for me. Some okay volume in there, but OML Media, I guess this has had a nice little tight consolidation in there. I guess what you did sort of see here, Chris, is just sort of kept seeing high lows, and this is sort of, that's a little, you know, could say this is a little VCP pattern here, and then a bit of a breakout in this day here. Bit hard to trade, obviously, you know, a bit light here, but that was definitely a bit of a, you know, because we've got a few high lows in here, 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern there, little VCP, little tightening up, and a bit of a pop there. So that's sort of something breaking above those highs there. It's gone on a little bit since then, but volumes are a bit light as well. So just a market there was pretty choppy. So not seeing big trending sort of market there. So still getting triggers, but probably, as Minervini would say, probably be, you know, trading these sort of shorter term moves rather than trying to hang on there. Grain just sort of moved up here, but it's again probably kind of light volume there, so not as sexy as some of the others. Karoon is definitely in that energy sector, so little VCP in here, got a little trigger on this sort of day here. Not great volumes through there, but yeah, obviously the sector is pretty firm here. And yeah, just starting to break up here. So just so many stocks in this sort of, in this area there. I mean, I was looking at Santos as well. I mean, look at the moves. I mean, moves down here, we sort of had big sort of volume down, sourcing that low there. Some really couple of big days up out of this pattern there. So basically that was a really good trigger day. This one here, sort of one I covered in my weekly report, but breaking above that previous high there, pretty strong volume. There's a pretty decent trigger there. So yeah, in terms of sort of trying to play these, you try and play the break if you can, and then after that, it's hard to come in after they've already popped here. So if you were going to come in, you want to see something like this, Chris, like a nice consolidation, like a little sideways.
So it really holds those gains with that volume.
Yeah. So you want to sort of see like a price coil. So, because therefore, I mean, like if someone wants to buy this here now, where do you put your stop? So, this could ease back in here. So you want to sort of see, with this sort of pattern here, you get a nice sort of coil in there. So you could basically, you can use this as your stop once you break out there. So you've got a reasonable sort of tightness in the risk reward there. So you just have to sort of, sometimes these things, if you've missed them, you just got to be patient, wait for a coil, wait for a bit of a breather, and come back in there. But they do look pretty bullish there. I mean, mean, Woodside as well. I mean, all that sort of, it's beautiful VCP in there, Chris, all that.
Yeah, that's
Just,
nice and tightening, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole thing just sort of tightened up here and then popped out of the range here. So there's your trigger. There's your trigger day there. Yeah, so it's just kicked on there. Thing about this one, actually, interesting sort of chart pattern is that, see how this has sort of got this little thrust high. I mean, this is a really strong move, and then we've got, this is overlapped here. So in my experience, I always get nervous when I see these sort of patterns, because these sort of 3 thrust highs, or these sort of broadening tops there, that they can sort of end big moves. Like we saw 1, 2, 3 up here. I think if I look back to 2014 there, I think this might have been a little 1, 2, 3 up here as well. So just this sort of 3 thrust sort of high is sort of something which often ends these big moves. But I mean, this could go to $37, $38, $39 first, but don't like the fact that this is a bit of an overlapping top here. So, but I guess, end of the day, this is pretty bullish here. You follow that short term, but I'd just have that in mind there. But I forgot to around 38. I'll probably be well and truly out of that position. So there's lots happening there. DGL was sort of one outside. It was actually one that I've sort of been watching there, just because it sort of had been rounding off here. Showing a bit of relative strength there versus a lot of other stocks there. Just sort of broke up, kind of broke that sort of swing high here. It's not really impulsive there. It's been a bit of a struggle to get up here. Volumes aren't sort of too high there. So it's probably one I'll just watch here, just because it is sort of showing, a little bit of strength, but so far a bit mild here, but sort of one on my watch list there. Just maybe this is going to make a few high lows, or maybe tighten up in here.
So if you get a price coil, is that kind of what you'd be watching for?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was watching this one here. Just because this was sort of a higher low in here, and the whole thing sort of sat, big sort of technical zone as well in here. So this has been, I think on the weekly, it's a pretty, so look at that. So it's, really sort of, held tight in here as well. So yeah, just might need to sort of do a bit more work here, but I like the fact that it's actually sort of held up here. In the face, a lot of other stocks have had really big corrections. So still decent sized correction from the high, but just not as large as some others there. ERA had a bit of a pop, so that's just a nice little consolidation there.
Back in the uranium space.
Yeah, another sort of sideways little shimmy there, starting to break up here. But a bit hard, bit small. That's the problem with a lot of these uranium miners. They're all small there. I think what Paladin's probably the bigger one there. It's hard to trade that on a gap in it. So, but yeah, just interesting. The sectors moving here, just tricky to trade these ones. That's all. That's always been the problem with uranium. They're sort of just sort of difficult there. NEC was outside there. I think that actually had a reasonable result the other day, so it's been a bit of a positive there. But building there, that's probably the only negative there. Is obviously that pullback did expand. Had a bit of a pop there yesterday, but yeah, I don't know. It's just, that looks okay without being awesome. Ones that I did sort of notice there, obviously the coal stocks, we're sort of, these things are still moving. New Hope Coal's obviously still moving. Whitehaven Coal, even in the face of a bit of a pretty disappointing dividend, it still bounced back here. So it looks pretty robust there. One stock which I did was actually looking at was the mining services there. Quite a few stocks there. So look at that tight consolidation there, Chris.
So that's what you're talking about, that coiling, not giving much.
So that's why you want to see a nice little sort of coil sideways, tighten up here, and then sort of follow that break here. So for me, just breaking out of that little, breaking above that little high there. What's that? 1440. That'd be just set your sort of stops or entry. Buy on a break of 1440 up to give yourself a few cents grace, and then you get triggered without even having to move there. You just get set there on the break here. So that looks pretty interesting. There's definitely a few mining service companies have been moving there. So yeah.
What kind of target would you look for if you're looking for the stops around that under the 14 level? You're entering on the swing high break.
Yeah.
What kind of target would you aim for?
Well, I sort of think that move from say 13 to 1460 there. That sort of length move is what we're looking for there. This is a bit of a this is essentially a midpoint. So looking to measure that sort of move there, which is probably up towards the old high, which is going to retest the old high there. So just technically, that makes sense, that type of move, and that would be probably up pretty close to around the old high there. So yeah, I mean the volumes are still light here, so but it does look pretty positive. But yeah, I think it's up around the old high there probably. But so markets are moving pretty quickly at the moment. Yeah, just got to be. I don't think sort of hanging on too long here. Sonic Healthcare's had a nice move, but again, we just look at the size of the moves here. We're sort of, we're rallying 32.50 up to 36 in 3 days and coming off. I mean, Domino's has had all the shakes up and down there. So there's just been some big moves across the market there. So yeah, Woodside's on the list. Homeco's on the list as well. I think a bit of a might have been a positive result in there. So that's not the worst sort of pattern as well. So that's quite a little tight sort of sideways shimmy in there. Probably like a little bit of a false break in there as well. So sort of gone sideways there, gone slightly lower than the previous high, then reversed. And then we got a bit of a move here. It's just the only thing at the moment is it's just a market which is really swinging back and forth here. I noticed a few times I've sort of got chopped up in a few stops here, and then a few times I've actually moved my stops just because I can see this type of a trend occurring here, and the next day they go straight back up again, and then so probably just need to give ourselves a bit more room in this market here, trade a bit smaller. But when we're also probably I wouldn't be overstaying stuff too. You're just seeing swings up and swings back down again, really quite wildly. So yeah, I'm probably trading a bit smaller than I normally would be, just because I think the market's a little trickier than normal. QUB looks okay as well. It's again, this is whole thing sort of tightening up here. It's probably an interesting chart here. Probably this sort of sector there is interesting sector. There was so far we just haven't broken a swing high there, so that's the only thing to sort of keep in mind there. But it does sort of feel like this is sort of flattening out. So if you remember, this sort of it's more of a sort of corrective decline there. Eventually, it sort of breaks up there. I think the one that was sort of reminds me a little bit. This was Treasury Wine. See how this has had a bit of a again through the period there. We just sort of saw a few lower highs in there. Eventually, it sort of did crack up through here. But yeah, so that probably looks pretty similar to me, the QUB. Just whether we're ready or not to get going or not, just might see another consolidation first. But this is more corrective there. Definitely saw some okay volumes in there. Some okay volumes in there as well. Some okay volume in here as well. So just it's got some signs there of possible sort of accumulation there. Just might need a little bit of time there. So maybe you want to see another little coil. Maybe we can get going here, but definitely.
Would that be making a VCP if it makes another coil?
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's sort of still around the same size, those corrections so far, but you want to sort of see it start to reduce there. But yeah, just that corrective decline there on the weekly is sort of encouraging. It just sometimes they can take a long time, So I remember seeing one on Flight Center there, years ago, which took almost like a year to build, So you got to be sometimes you got to be quite patient when you sort of see the weekly. So and then you tend to get a clear sign when they've broken up. You see volume come in. So just got to be patient there. But yeah, look, there's lots happening there. Obviously, that sector, the energy is obviously the one that's really moving there. Just pretty tricky to trade. We're just seeing market flash up and down pretty big. So I probably encourage the traders are probably noticing at the moment. My view is to just trade a bit smaller here. If it's volatile and tricky, just take smaller positions there. Sometimes sort of when it's harder like this, you sort of just want to go through and it might be more important to not lose any money when the market's harder. And then when we sort of turn back into a sweet spot again, then we can put the foot back down again and start making more money on, and getting a bit more heavily invested. But it does feel a little more volatile, a little trickier than normal.
Yeah, it's definitely, as you're noting out in these charts, you're getting them hit down and then quickly reverse and rally back up. So volatile, chopping in and out of trades. Like you're saying, have those targets a little bit tighter, stops possibly tightening up, and looking for the shorter trade as opposed to those big long swings, aren't you?
Yeah. It just feels like some of these moves aren't following through. Like a lot of those sort of, obviously some of our leading sectors are still pretty robust. So I think just sort of playing those, waiting for a little pullback, waiting for those sort of price coils, and then going with those. But the rest of the market there is like some of these moves are really just short and sharp, and then pulling back, and then obviously we're in reporting season, so you get some of those moves. But the only ones that are probably reliable there is if we see a real fundamental, positive result, which wasn't expected, and then you get a bit of a gap up and good volume, and those are the ones that are following through. But other than that, you're sort of seeing, some of the moves up and down here, would seem to, they look pretty good one day, and then the next day they flash back, half the range. So it's so it's a little tricky.
All right, so they're very good insights for the week and unpacking both the market momentums, but as you've noted in this week, you're finding more on the launchpad, more appealing trades. So thank you very much for unpacking those, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
If you want to see more of Gary's videos, he's mentioned his Tuesday video where he talked about the energy stocks earlier in the week. You can click on the right-hand side for that playlist. And he's also mentioned some volatility contraction patterns where we're going to detail on what that strategy is, also on the right-hand side.